The first thing he noticed wasn't her diamond bracelet or the sharp red of her dress. It was the way she kept staring at the empty chair across from her, like she was waiting for someone who had already decided not to come. Snow pressed softly against the tall glass windows of the restaurant in downtown Chicago, blurring the city lights into 1,000 trembling stars. Marcus hadn't meant to look at her twice. He was too tired for that. Too tired from double shifts at the warehouse. Too tired from worrying about whether his 7-year-old son, Caleb, had remembered to lock the apartment door behind him when he left for basketball practice. He had chosen the cheapest table near the window, ordered water instead of wine, and told himself this dinner meeting might finally change something. Across the room sat Victoria Hale, the CEO of a tech company everyone in Illinois seemed to be talking about. She had built an empire before she turned 40. Her name appeared in magazines, on billboards, in interviews where she spoke about innovation and resilience. Tonight, though, she looked small, smaller than the headlines ever made her seem. Marcus wasn't supposed to be here alone. The investor who promised to introduce him to Victoria had canceled an hour before dinner. He had almost left too. What would you have done? Walked out before embarrassment had a chance to settle in. Or stayed even when your pride told you to disappear? He stayed. Because Caleb needed new shoes. Because the rent had gone up again. Because sometimes hope only shows up when you're too stubborn to quit. Victoria's assistant had mistakenly seated Marcus at the table next to hers, assuming he was part of her scheduled meeting. For several minutes, they both sat in silence, each pretending not to notice the other's solitude. The chandeliers above cast soft reflections on their glasses of water. Other tables were full of laughter and clinking silverware, but between them, there was only the quiet hum of the heating vents and the storm outside. Marcus didn't plan to speak. He didn't plan to intrude. But when Victoria's phone lit up for the third time and she turned it face down without answering, something in him shifted. Maybe it was the way her shoulders sagged afterward, as if the light from the screen had weighed too much. He leaned slightly toward her table, careful not to invade her space, and said softly, almost to himself, "Seems like we're both alone tonight." The words surprised even him. Victoria looked up slowly. Her eyes were striking, but not in the way magazines described. There was a tiredness there, a familiar ache Marcus recognized from his own reflection every morning at 5 a.m. For a moment she studied him, perhaps deciding whether to be offended or amused. Instead, she did something no one expected from a woman worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She nodded, and then she asked if he was waiting for someone too. He told her the truth. He said the meeting had fallen through. He said he almost didn't come. He didn't mention the eviction notice tucked inside his jacket pocket. He didn't mention Caleb's cough that hadn't gone away. But something in his voice must have carried the weight of those things. Victoria surprised him again by admitting that the person she was supposed to meet, her fiancé, had just ended their engagement over a text message. After 5 years, after countless flights between New York and Chicago, after promises that always seemed to have an expiration date. What if that had been you? Building something so large the world applauds you, only to realize you built it alone. The snow fell heavier, muting the city even further. Their conversation unfolded cautiously at first, like strangers stepping onto thin ice. Marcus spoke about Caleb, about how being a single dad wasn't part of the plan but became the greatest part of his life after his wife, Rachel, passed away in a car accident 3 winters ago. He described learning to braid hair because Caleb insisted on growing his curls long like his mom used to keep them. He described reading bedtime stories even when his eyes burned from exhaustion. Victoria listened without interrupting. No assistant. No board members, just her. When she finally spoke about her own life, it wasn't about stock prices or mergers. It was about the quiet of her penthouse condo, about coming home to awards and glass walls and realizing no one was there to say goodnight. She admitted she had postponed children for her career and told herself there would always be time later. Later, she discovered, had a way of disappearing. The waiter approached twice to take orders, but neither of them noticed. The storm outside had wrapped the restaurant in its own small world. 2 strangers, each carrying different forms of loss, sitting close enough to feel the warmth of shared understanding. Marcus didn't pitch his business idea the way he had rehearsed. Instead, he talked about why he started it. A simple after-school robotics program for kids in underfunded neighborhoods on the South Side. He wanted kids like Caleb to have access to tools that made them dream beyond cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. He had been seeking investors to expand it into community centers across the city. Victoria's expression changed then. Not the polite interest of a CEO evaluating numbers, but something deeper, something personal. She asked about funding gaps, about how many kids were currently enrolled, about what expansion would realistically cost. Marcus answered honestly, admitting he was in over his head financially but refusing to sound defeated. Because he wasn't asking for pity, he was asking for possibility. Hours passed unnoticed. The restaurant emptied. Snow buried the streets outside, and somewhere between the first awkward glance and the last melted ice cube in their glasses, something shifted in Victoria. She said that for years she had been searching for impact beyond quarterly reports, that her fiancé once accused her of caring more about code than people. She wondered out loud whether she had mistaken success for fulfillment. Marcus didn't respond with grand wisdom. He simply told her that every night when Caleb fell asleep, he felt like the richest man in the world, even if his bank account disagreed. By the time they stood to leave, the storm had slowed to a whisper. Victoria asked for his business proposal, but not in the detached tone of an executive. She asked for it like someone asking for a second chance at meaning. A week later, Marcus found himself sitting in Victoria's corner office overlooking Lake Michigan. The eviction notice was still in his jacket, but his hands trembled for a different reason. She had spent the entire week reviewing his program, visiting one of the after-school sessions unannounced, watching Caleb proudly show her the robot he built from spare parts. That morning she approved a multi-million-dollar investment to expand the program statewide, not as a publicity stunt, not as a tax write-off, but as a partnership. She asked Marcus to lead it, offering him a salary that would erase the constant knot in his chest. Marcus struggled to speak. He thought about Rachel, about Caleb's worn sneakers, about the night he almost left the restaurant because he felt out of place. Victoria admitted something.